Brian Kelly raves about his transfers. The baseball team gets a sweep, and the LSU Basketball Tigers decline an NIT invite. A jam-packed show. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please, as always, subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making us your first listen. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you so much for that. Lot to get to today, including the LSU Basketball Tigers passing on the NIT. I'll give you a recap of the weekend for the LSU Baseball Tigers, their sweep. Now, we gave you our post-game for each game. If you want to go get those full post-game episodes, you can, but I'll put it all in a nice package with a bow on top. We'll do that coming up here shortly. But on Saturday, media got to watch about an hour of LSU practice. I did give you a practice report episode as well. We had a busy weekend. You go catch all that content for free here on Locked on LSU. But I gave you my post-practice recap. But after practice, Brian Kelly met with reporters, and there's some of the things he said that I wanted to dive into today because I think it's massively relevant and significant to start to hear from the coach as we move through spring. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So the Tigers practiced for about 2 hours on Saturday. Media got to see about an hour of it before the lightning came. They went indoors and then we got kicked out. But afterwards, Brian Kelly met with us. And one of the really impactful statements that he made was when he was asked about his transfers. And the way that the question was asked was kind of like what he had seen from those guys to this point. Quite honestly, it's 5 practices, not sure that there's a ton. But there was something in this 60-second answer from Brian Kelly that really stood out to me. And I'm curious if it stands out to you as well. Give a listen.
We had seen the impact of our transfers over the last few months, and we're really pleased. I don't think that this scrimmage had anything to do with whether this validated their presence or not. Their presence was validated in the way they've shown themselves over the last 8 weeks, their work ethic, their commitment to being champions both on and off the field. They've been outstanding. These guys are they're here to win a championship. I mean, you go out there today, I don't know, you guys were at practice, right? I mean, you don't hear a bunch of talking. I mean, it is business. I mean, they are here to win a championship, and they take their craft serious. They go to work, and it's fun.
Obviously, the part of that soundbite where he talks about it's business for the transfers is what stands out and probably should stand out. Now, when I was watching practice on Saturday, I was there for the full hour. I'll candidly tell you that's not the thing that jumped out to me. But then again, I wasn't looking for it. But when he said that, I thought back and yeah, it's true. Now, they blare loud music during practice and they try to keep the energy high, but there wasn't a lot of chatter. Now, there's a couple ways to look at that. Now, I remember in fall camp, very distinctly, there was a scrimmage session and, Blake Baker's a high energy guy, defensive coordinator. And man, there was points where, they were, the guys were high-fiving and Blake Baker, is down and doing push-ups with them. And it was one of those types of high energy, loud type things. Now you can say, is that an illustration that they weren't taking it seriously? I don't think so. I think it's just sometimes there's energy and there isn't. But at this point, I think Brian Kelly probably has a pretty good sense of his guys. Like Jack Pyburn was running with the first team defense, the defensive end from Florida. Jakeem Jackson, the cornerback from Florida, was running at first team cornerback. Tamarcus Cooley was running at first team safety coming in from NC State. That's 3 transfers on the defensive side that are running first team. And you better believe guys like Patrick Payton are going to factor in massively on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, None of the transfers were running with the ones initially, but we're all anticipating Braylon Moore is going to be your starting center. When Josh Thompson shows up from Northwestern, he's going to be starting at either guard or tackle. They look 5 practices in, you were still seeing your veteran wide receivers with Chris Hilton and Aaron Anderson and Xavier Thomas running with the ones, but Nick Anderson and Berrien Brown and Destin Hill weren't far behind. And then you got like Kyle Parker, who's been here. But the point being, to what Brian Kelly's saying there about the transfers was the point was pretty well taken about why those guys are here. Yes, absolutely. Each of them had an opportunity in the transfer portal to cash in. There's a financial component of every one of those players being here that is not debatable. However, each of them also came to a spot where they do have a chance to win. Think about it. I just mentioned 2 guys from Florida. Now, Florida beat LSU last year, but that was a 500 football team. Florida was. Pyburn and Jakeem Jackson are both coming here with a chance to win. Braylon Moore was at Virginia Tech, and that's a guy, as was Mansour Delane, by the way, who was awesome in this practice. And I do think that Mansour Delane is going to end up being a starter at cornerback. But those were guys at Virginia Tech that, with a veteran team last year, the expectation was very high, and they didn't meet it anywhere close to it with the Hokies a season ago. Run through the list. If it's Tamarcus Cooley at NC State, or Bauer Sharp coming in from Oklahoma, who we saw a lot of 2 tight end sets with the ones. I mean, Oklahoma was a 500 football team. Bauer Sharp started his college career at Southeastern Louisiana in Hammond, knows the area well, but also had a chance to leave a 500 football team, come to an offense where they feature the tight end, make money, potentially be a first-round pick, and also win a championship. So a lot of what Brian Kelly had to say there is true, because for all of those guys, there is a component of them being here. They're all veteran players who aren't so much interested in the hoopla. I've told you this story before. If you're an everydayer, you've heard it, and thank you for being there. But one of the things that stood out to me so much last year when I had a chance to talk to Gio Paez, remember Paez was a 4-year player at Wisconsin, transferred to LSU for his final season. He was playing defensive end in a 3-4 at Wisconsin. And when I talked to him about why he picked LSU, he said he was not considering any school that ran a 3-4. He wanted to be a 4-3 defensive tackle, someone who could get in the gaps, in the spaces, and wreak havoc. Now, unfortunately for Paez, when Jacoby and Guillory went down, it slid him inside, and he ended up playing more of a nose technique. But the point being, he was an all-business guy. I mean, he told me point blank when he came on the recruiting trip, he wasn't taking pictures in the uniform and doing all that stuff. It was let's go look at the film and tell me how you're going to use me. And you get a sense that that's the case with these guys as well. And I hate to draw this comparison or hearken this name because I know how people are going to react to it, but that's the same thing Joe Burrow said when he came here. Joe Burrow didn't take the pictures in the uniform. Like, it was specifically about sitting down with Steve Ensminger and talking football and how are you going to use me in this offense? Like, how is this going to look? And ultimately, they made sweet music together. And I think for a lot of these guys, yes, while it's naive to ignore the financial component of it, I also don't think that's the only part. Remember, we had a conversation with Jack Pyburn when he committed to LSU, and he was running with the first-team defensive ends. And he said part of the reason that he's here, a big part, is he wants to go from being an effective edge rusher to an elite edge rusher. He's always been good as a run stopper, but he wanted to be able to rush the passer. And he thought coming to LSU in this defense with a guy like Kevin Peoples as his coach had an opportunity to take that step in the same way a guy like Braden Swinson did during his time in Baton Rouge and in Blake Baker's defense where they focus on aggressiveness. It starts to put the pieces of the puzzle together where you realize, yes, NIL, money, all that. Yes, I'm not ignoring that in any way. Of course, it's part of it. But that was the finishing touch that got you these guys that were interested because of the thing Brian Kelly said. They want to improve and win a championship and put themselves in the best position to go on to the next level and potentially be a first-round pick and do whatever may come there in the NFL. Interesting to hear Brian Kelly say it. You have a very mature football team in 2025. And of course, not only the transfers, but returning a guy like Garrett Nussmeier as a fifth-year senior as a starting quarterback. Now, Brian Kelly, I did ask him about safety play. And I asked him that last year during the season as well, because we've gone through these numbers. Safety was by a mile the weakest link on your defense. So what has he seen so far in spring practice to be encouraged there might be growth and development there at safety? We're going to get to that next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Eating healthy doesn't have to be complicated. With Factor, you get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, so you can fuel your body without the hassle of cooking. Factor meals arrive fresh, never frozen, and with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, you can customize your menu to fit your goals, whether that's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. If you've been here, I've told you about it. I am a Factor subscriber, have been for a while now, even before we started endorsing it here on Locked on LSU. My Factor box comes every Monday. I've used Keto. You can also use a Chef's Choice. Well, they'll curate for you if you want maybe some variety. I intermittent fast, so I don't do the breakfast. I just do entrees. I do lunch and dinner every day of the week. My Factor box comes, and I have chef-made, great tasting meals. Y'all, I have done the whole meal prep services, almost everyone you can imagine. Factor by far is the best. You slit the film, you put it in the microwave, 2 minutes, heat and eat, you're ready to go. Get your life back, your time back, eat healthy. You'll love it. It's Factor. I am a believer. I'm a subscriber. Like I don't get free meals for talking about it. It's part of the network we endorse, but I pay for it every week because it's a phenomenal product. I love it. So eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code factorpodcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code factorpodcast at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Today's show is also brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. So, Brian Kelly, after he met with reporters, of course, we talked a little bit about what they've been able to do with the transfer portal. Well, a giant position of need was safety. It's something we talked about all throughout last season. Safety was LSU's weakest link defensively, and it wasn't particularly close. Now, Sage Ryan was your highest graded safety according to Pro Football Focus with a grade of 69.9. But his run defense was a 51. As you go through it, the other safeties, Jordan Allen played some safety. His grade was a 62. Deshaun Spears, the freshman from a year ago, rising sophomore now, a 61. And the lowest graded player among your starters and your regulars was Major Burns with a grade of 57. His tackling grade was 55. I give you all of that context because what you're about to hear from Brian Kelly is a question I asked him. And I asked how I left it very open-ended. I first asked how I asked him to give me an update on Jordan Gilbert because Jordan Gilbert has not been out there. Remember, Gilbert started for you a year ago, but played really throughout that entire season with a separated shoulder. And bless him, he worked very hard and played through it. His overall grade was a 53. His tackling grade was a 51. It's kind of what happens whenever you're playing with a perpetually separated shoulder. So how could he possibly play through that? It was tough, but Gilbert hasn't been, he had shoulder surgery after the season. He's not been out there so far in spring. So I asked for an update on Gilbert, but then I asked him to assess the safety play so far through 5 practices. So the end of the cut is you're going to hear him talk about Gilbert, but listen to him talk about the improvement at the safety position, in particular, the things he's looking for from safeties. Then we'll come back to this.
Well, I would say pleased. When I assess the safety play, and it's only 5 practices, Matt, so it's hard, I'm not going to be able to give you a deep dive on everything, but there are a couple of things that I'm looking for. The first is, are we making tackles at or near the line of scrimmage? And we are. Are we making open field tackles and getting the ball down when the ball breaks through the second level of our defense? And we are. We weren't doing that and have not done that on a consistent basis. Are we, from a technical standpoint, playing the ball in the air well? And I see it in 7-on-7 that the structure of our defense is such that we are. So the early indications are that we're getting that kind of play that you generally see with the development of young players. Deshaun Spears, Joel Rogers, Cooley, those guys in particular, getting a lot of work back there and have looked really good. Now, you mentioned Gilbert. He hasn't gotten any play back there, but here's what we know about him. He's outstanding against the run. He's tough. He's physical. And so plug in a veteran guy when he gets healthy into that mix, and now you really have some things to work with when we talk about the structure of our defense.
Do you think you'll have Gilbert in spring, or is he out all spring?
No, he'll be out all spring. Yeah. But he's there every day. I mean, he's been a great leader, and he's actually been the kind of veteran guy that you want, right? He's been around those young guys. He's been accountable. He's been really good.
Okay. So the things Brian Kelly wanted: make tackles near the line of scrimmage, make tackles in the open field, and play the ball in the air. Those are the 3 things he's looking for from his safeties. Now, remember those grades that I just told you from your guys from a year ago. Like when you just look at tackling grades, Sage Ryan was a 74. Kylan Jackson was a 78. These aren't necessarily bad grades. Jordan Allen was a 57. Deshaun Spears was a 71 on his tackling grade. It's interesting because your tackling grade for some of these guys, now the ones you counted on, Major Burns and that you heard that Jordan Gilbert, were actually not very good. Those were 2 of your lowest graded guys. Gilbert's tackling grade was a 51 and Burns' tackling grade was a 55. Those were among your starters from a year ago. But remember, Gilbert was injured, and you heard Brian Kelly talk about how physical he is, how elite he is as a tackler at the line of scrimmage. That does illustrate and underscore the point that guy was playing with a separated shoulder all year, and it certainly affected his play. Now, the 2 safeties that were starting in that scrimmage period that we got to see were Javen Toviano and Tamarcus Cooley. Now, you heard Brian Kelly say some of that's just the young guys being developed. Part of that's Toviano, undeniably. But Cooley's coming in after spending this past year at NC State, where he was one of the highest graded safeties, one of the highest graded players on the entire NC State team, would have been the highest graded safety on LSU's team if it were what. Well, he was asked a question, Brian Kelly was, about Cooley specifically and playing the nickel. Now, there's kind of been this question of who's going to play corner, who's going to play safety. And Brian Kelly, I thought, gave a really good answer to this question.
Playing in the nickel position, you're either a corner playing nickel or you're a safety playing nickel. He was a safety playing nickel. So he's had experience playing at that position. And we felt like that was the reason why we recruited him, that he was a safety that could play nickel. But there are corners that can play and at the nickel position as well. there's a difference, obviously. One's a little bit more physical at that position than the other, and one's maybe a little bit more gifted in terms of the coveraging, but maybe not as strong against the run. So he was always a safety that could play nickel, and that was the kind of versatility that we thought we would get in the recruiting.
Corners that play nickel can cover. Safeties that play nickel can tackle. They're choosing a safety that can play nickel. Why? They need a tackle. What did Brian Kelly tell you? Tackle near the line of scrimmage. Open field tackle. He's telling you we got a safety who can play nickel because he can tackle. What's been LSU's biggest problem defensively the past 2 years? They can't tackle. Yes, you got to improve in coverage, but they feel like they've improved in coverage because you added DJ Pickett, you added Jakeem Jackson, you added Mansour Delane, you got Ashton Stamps coming back as a third-year player and a 2-year starter. You feel like you got your coverage guys out wide. Now, my goodness, can you find someone on this defense that can tackle? That's what they're looking for. You want something to watch defensively for this team? Can they tackle the freaking football at the line and in the secondary? I'll tell you, there was a play in that scrimmage, and if you heard our scrimmage recap, you heard me talk about it, but one of them was Austin Osbury, a safety, playing the star position, which will be Harold Perkins. They ran it was a running play to the right side. Austin Osbury comes down from that star position, fills the gap, tackle at the line of scrimmage of Caden Durham for no gain. That's the kind of thing that just evaded and has evaded this team. Do you have guys that can cover on the outside? And do you have guys that can tackle the football? Brian Kelly's telling you he feels like he's got those guys. Long way to go, right? You're 5 practices into spring right now, but they feel like they got the right people to execute what they want to do. So Tigers will be back on the practice field this week. Media will have a full practice to watch on Tuesday. I'm looking forward to giving you that full update as we continue here every single day on Locked On LSU. The baseball Tigers got a sweep this weekend. I'll give you my recap of the weekend when we wrap up next. Locked On LSU, your team every day. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. Pick your favorites, whether it's underdogs. FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, game props, and with tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
As we put a button here on today's episode, the bracket breakdown won't involve LSU. The Tigers, of course, were 14-18 overall. They were 3-15 in the SEC. LSU was by default and earned an NIT bid that I learned on Sunday declined. As I was told from a spokesperson at LSU, some of the injuries and number issues is why they declined. But let's be honest, this was a basketball season that was a total disaster. You're 3-15 in the league. If you're wondering how LSU got an NIT bid to begin with, so the SEC gets 2 auto bids to the NIT. They changed this a year ago. So the first 2 teams not invited to the NCAA tournament get auto bids to the NIT. Well, 14 of the 16 teams in the league earned bids in the NCAA tournament. So that meant only LSU and South Carolina were left out, meaning they get the auto bids to the NIT. Well, both LSU and South Carolina declined those auto bids to the NIT. Their seasons are over. And now for LSU basketball, the onus is on Matt McMahon and this staff in the offseason. If the true commitment is there to spend an NIL on this roster for next basketball season, and I've been told that number is around $5 million. Again, that's not revenue share. That's going to be NIL front loading here in this spring portal window before revenue share goes into effect. This is it for Matt McMahon. I don't know if he can. I'm not saying he will. I'm not saying he won't be able to win. I'm just saying nobody was winning in this conference with the team Matt McMahon had assembled. So give him the resources to go assemble a team that's capable of competing, and let's see how it goes. Maybe he falls flat on his face. If he does, fire him. Move on. Or maybe you give a good coach a loaded roster, and he's able to go win with it. We'll see in short order. Speaking of loaded rosters, the LSU baseball team sweeps Missouri over the weekend, 3-0. 10-5 was the score on Sunday. And LSU baseball, after a pretty emphatic win on Friday behind a dominating pitching performance from Cade Anderson with 11 strikeouts and just the one walk in what ended up being a 12-5 win on Friday. Tigers come back on Saturday. It's a nail biter. They end up winning 7-6. Case and Evans brilliant out of the bullpen. And then on Sunday, Missouri never led in that game. LSU a 4 spot in the first inning, and they paced themselves to a 10-5 win. A couple of takeaways here from the weekend that I'll share with you. I think number one, Jake Brown has got to be in the lineup every day, and I would say the same for Josh Pearson. I know that this, I don't mean this as any disrespect to Ethan Fry, and I don't mean it as any disrespect to any of the players on the team that are very good, capable players at the college level. I think one of the big issues that Jay Johnson has on this team right now is he recruited, this is going to be an oxymoron, but it's almost like he recruited too many good players. Maybe it's ironic to say your biggest problem is you recruited too many good players. But he's trying to find a way to keep everybody happy instead of playing the best guys. Jake Brown is a 5-tool player who needs to be in your lineup every day. On Friday, I get what Jay Johnson was doing. Mizzou threw a lefty. He was trying to stack the lineup with righties. So you saw Ethan Fry in there. You saw Braswell at third. He was trying to get righties in the lineup. But the bottom line is Jake Brown is a 5-tool guy that's one of your best players and needs to be in the lineup every day. It's not about satisfying people. It shouldn't be about trying not to hurt feelings or keeping guys happy. It should be about playing your best guys. On Tuesdays against UNO, if you want to empty the bench, okay. If you're up 10 in a weekend game and you want to empty the bench, fine. I just can't understand writing a lineup card without Jake Brown's name in it every day. He was fantastic this weekend, continues to be, and I think he's got to be out there in your lineup every day. Your best defensive lineup in in the outfield is Curiel in left, Stanfield in center, and Jake Brown in right. Brown right now is the third leading hitter on the team. Curiel's at 451, Jared Jones is at 400, Brown's at 393. How in the world can you justify taking an elite glove and a 393 hitter out of your lineup? Ever. I don't think you can. So I think Jake Brown needs to be in the lineup every single day. Chase Shores on Sunday only went 3 2/3. And so I know there's a lot of you, and I've already heard this question a little bit. Hey man, Einstein and Shores better be careful because Zach Cowan might take their spot in the rotation. I'm going to flatly disagree with you. Not only do I think that won't happen, I think that would be a terrible idea. And I'll tell you why. So Zach Cowan was a starter at Wofford last year, was a Friday night guy. He is more valuable, just like Case and Evans is, in the bullpen. If we can all agree right now that LSU's bullpen has been shaky and trying to find consistent guys that can get outs, if your two best guys in the bullpen are Evans and Cowan, why would you take them out of the bullpen? As of right now, if Jay Johnson has a lead, I even gave you this scenario before this weekend. I said if it's a 1-run game going to the 9th, they got to go get 3 outs. Who are they giving the ball to? Case and Evans. It's not even a question. What happened on Saturday? It was a 1-run game. Case and Evans finished it for you. On Sunday, Zach Cowan went and got you the final 7 outs of the ball game. Both those guys are capable of extending. They're capable of getting outs. Everyone else right now, you're waiting to see what they can be. Like Maverick Rizzi was pretty good on Sunday. He came in, got your ground ball double play after Connor Ware hit a guy with 1 out in the 5th. Got you the ground ball double play to get out of the inning. I think Maverick Rizzi and Cooper Williams and Grant Fontenot and some of these guys have huge upside. You got 8 different guys that throw 95. But what you don't have right now are guys that are consistently throwing strikes. So you have to identify the strike throwers and utilize them as much as possible. Zach Cowan is one of those guys who's a strike thrower, who you're confident giving the ball to, who can affect multiple games on the weekend when you use him out of the bullpen. He needs to stay in the bullpen. I'll give you another reason why Zach Cowan needs to stay in the bullpen. Because his best pitch is a changeup and he can't overpower anybody, it's more likely that after you get through a lineup once, especially against good SEC offenses, and they see him, they can adjust. So Cowan, as a guy of the bullpen that can maybe get you through the lineup once, is really effective. If you start him and you're trying to get him to go through a lineup a second and maybe a third time, it's less likely he'll be effective because he really features one pitch, that changeup. So he is a more effective in the SEC. He is a more effective bullpen pitcher than he would be a starter. So I know I'm going to hear that. I'm hearing it from a lot of you already. But the bottom line is the real challenge is for Nate Yeske, the pitching coach who makes a lot of money, to find a way to maximize Anthony Ianson and Chase Shores to let them extend deeper into games so you're not taxing a bullpen that already is short on guys you trust to throw strikes. You got to get those guys to throw strikes. You got to develop a lot of that young talent. You got to make sure those starters can extend deeper than they did this weekend. Y'all, Missouri's the worst team in the SEC. That is a bad baseball team you played. That is a average mid-major caliber team that you played. Everybody was throwing 86 to 90. Y'all, the competition ratchets up dramatically this weekend when you play Texas. You're going to see the best arms you've seen all year. They got a shortstop, a right fielder, a couple of guys that are legit prospects, legit big league prospects. The starters are going to be the best arms you faced all year. They don't have great bullpen depth, and that's going to be a huge advantage for LSU if you can get into the bullpen. But this is the worst team that you're going to play all year, the one you just swept. Now, you swept them. That's what you're supposed to do. But you came out of that weekend with some real questions that you got to iron out and a lot of improvement that still has to happen. But what you've learned certainly are things like Zach Cowan is a key guy out of the bullpen. Jake Brown needs to be in the lineup every single day. Hopefully that continues this weekend when LSU heads to Austin for its first road SEC series at Texas. You know, we'll be here, and of course we'll be doing post-game live shows after every game this week and all throughout the college baseball season following the Tigers. Okay, that'll do it for us here on today's episode of Locked On LSU. Thanks for making this your first listen. For your second listen, go check out Locked On College Basketball. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you are on podcasts, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.